Welcome to the MSDW podcast. I'm Jason Gumpert, editor at msdynamicsworld.com, and welcome back to the AX to D365 Finance and Operations Upgrade Journeys podcast series. Boy, it always feels like a long title. I'm joined once again by my co-host in the series, Peter Jekyll of Turn On Dynamics. Hey, Peter.
Jason, that is a mouthful, isn't it?
It is. Every time I say it, I feel like I have to take a breath to get through it. But we are back, nevertheless, and this is an interesting episode. We are joined this time by two members of the Fast Track team from the F&O product R&D organization, Gokul, Ramesh, and Sigita, who are both taking time out of their very busy days to help us and hopefully our listeners understand a little more about Fast Track. Peter, what are some of the themes that you are getting out of what you know about Fast Track?
So the things I want to hear today is, where is that program today as far as, the type of customer that you have to be to take advantage of Fast Track? What are the tools that are on the horizon? And, what are the things that they're learning, right? As a partner, you may be doing X number of, looking at these kinds of projects or actually executing the projects. They're sitting behind the scenes seeing all the projects, right? And so, what is that mass learning that they're getting, and what are the biggest things they know and the things that they've learned, right? So those are the things that I'm looking forward to finding out about.
Yeah, I mean, and for me, I would just add the perspective of, like you said, that vision of sort of all these projects coming through, at least all the cloud projects, is really a profound difference from the past. And I think I'm not sure how well the AX customer base, who's still looking at upgrades, and I'm sure the vast majority of them still haven't done it and are thinking about it, or it's in the future in some way. How much do they really know about Fast Track? And I think Fast Track really is a way to sort of summarize Microsoft's efforts to make a cloud deployment, successful and lower risk than maybe people would fear it is. So I think how Microsoft is answering those questions and addressing those concerns is really one of the key points to not only the program, but its whole purpose and its reason for being. So let's jump into it. Okay, we are back, and we're joined now by two members of Microsoft's Finance and Operations product team. We have Gokul, Ramesh, and Sigita on the line. And maybe we could start first, welcome to both of you. And could each of you maybe introduce yourselves and tell us a little more about where your areas of focus are? Gokul, maybe we could start with you.
Thanks, Jason, for having us on this podcast. So my name is Gokul Ramesh, and I've been with Microsoft for the past 11 years. And currently I'm part of Fast Track and Solution Architecture team. And I'm a principal solution architect, and I lead the technical track within the Fast Track program.
And hi, Sigita.
Hello, so my name is Sigita Cepaitiene, and I'm also principal solution architect within the Fast Track team. Pretty long road with ERP systems, and I have been in this business for the last 18 years or so, 12 of those years with Microsoft, and I have spent the majority of my time within the research and development team as a program manager, mostly in the financial area, and for the last 3 years I am Fast Track solution architect and enjoying it here.
Excellent. I imagine something like Fast Track is, since both of you have been in the ERP space for many years, Fast Track has got to be something that's really quite different in some ways from the kind of ERP work that had been done in the past. I mean, I know certainly methodologies and tools for getting companies onboarded to ERP is nothing new, but this approach seems to be really focused on Microsoft's cloud goals, which really didn't exist until a few years ago. Would you agree?
Yeah, you're right, Jason. And think of this as a corporate branding program in terms of Fast Track. This actually started with Office, And when we made a journey for Office from on-prem to Office 365 on the cloud, we started Fast Track program to help customers to make that journey. So similarly, right now we have a Fast Track program for customers who are making their digital transformation to cloud. And we want to help all these customers who are moving to Dynamics 365 to be successful.
Yeah, so I think if to put the parallel to the digital transformation journey that we are guiding our customers to, we went through the same journey ourselves, right? We as Microsoft owning ERP system who was for a long time on-prem, right, moved to the cloud, that both enabled us to learn way more about our customers and how they are using the product, and at the same time to evolve the product to make sure that we are fitting our customer needs through that digital transformation loop. So Fast Track is a big part of that journey.
Yeah, and also ERP systems are more complex. So you will see that even though it's a Fast Track team, but the Fast Track team on Office side and the Fast Track team on D365 side, it's a bit different in terms of how we get involved in implementation and the complexities we have with ERP.
All right, and from my perspective, I've certainly noticed that Fast Track has a much higher profile this year than it did last year. And last year, I felt like people were really still being introduced to it. Maybe a year, 1 to 2 years ago in that time frame. And actually, this is a good time probably to bring in my co-host in this podcast series, Peter Jekyll, who's also on the line. Hey, Peter, thanks for being here once again.
Good to be on here as always.
And you have a much different perspective than I do, which I think really hopefully adds a little to this conversation, because I'm sort of here tracking this stuff from a news media side, but Peter, you're also you're tracking it on behalf of customers and on behalf of, or in the context of projects that you're working on.
We just had an upgrade go live today.
Oh wow, busy day.
Yeah,
or exciting
literally.
Day anyway.
Yeah, literally. Went through all the processing over the weekend, got the final sign off yesterday morning at 8 a.m. and went live this morning. So Jason's more of the handsome media guy, and I'm more of the guy digging the ditches in the with a shovel here.
And so I guess for our Microsoft guests, the first question that I really have about it, what I was really hoping to get out of today was to understand more about where the Fast Track, initiative is at today, because I know, like I said, I've noticed it has been evolving and becoming more prominent, and also kind of to understand how customers should be benefiting from it. I think our listeners probably want to really understand that as well, what the benefits of it are, how those should be applying to customers like Peter's and all the other partners out there. So maybe that's the first place that I would like to learn a little more. So how would you describe the kinds of customers that either are benefiting from Fast Track services or that you would hope would be benefiting from it?
So I'll start and Sigita can add. In terms of, firstly, I want to start with, there are really two service tiers within Fast Track. One is we call Fast Track Essential, and the other one is Full Fast Track. So in both the programs, think of this as an investment from R&D and product group, wherein you are getting guidance directly from R&D in terms of how to implement the project and how to be successful. And within these two tiers, if a customer has less than 150 licenses, then they qualify for Fast Track Essential. And if they have above 150 licenses, then they qualify for Full Fast Track with an architect. So the goal here is for Fast Track Essential, we think of it as like a self-serve experience where we surface whether would be tech talks or learning material or updating docs.microsoft.com on patterns. So we have all of these as a self-service mechanisms where customer can benefit. And in terms of full fast track, we'll have an architect assigned to that customer who would be working with that customer on kind of initially kickoff and then going through solution review. We call it SBR, which is Solution Blueprint Review, and then getting into the details of each phases, how we will help, and what are the things that we will do from a review standpoint, and helping with the best practice and guidance. So I'll also let Sigita have.
Yeah, so thanks, Gokul. Irrespectively what the size of the customer is, right? We want each of them to be very successful. So you can probably put fast track teams, benefits, the benefit that we provide for a customer to 3 buckets, as I like to say. So first of all, help each customer to implement the good quality solutions and implement that as fast as you can. And that's what we do through the solution blueprint reviews, sharing our knowledge across different implementations across the globe, and making sure that the best practices are being followed and well understood. And obviously those things are sometimes hard to keep up, the fast pace, how we are evolving the product. So definitely we try to serve as a catalyst here and help each and single implementation, both through individual touch and also through tech talks and workshops and other ways how we try to spread that knowledge. The second benefit, if you would talk about it, is going live with confidence. So every single customer, irrespectively of the size of the customer, is going through something that we call pre-go live readiness workshop. So close to the go live time, once customer already has tested the solution and they are in the final stages of the preparation. But we are meeting with those customers and we are assessing their readiness for the go live, again, to try to make sure that if there was something that fallen through the cracks before the go live, that we catch that and help to make sure that this is not something that is in the way for that important go live date. And third benefit, if you will, would be the staying connected to the product, in a sense that we are a research and development organization. We are the part of the product team. We work with people who are building the features and people who are thinking about the next steps around those, around where our product should go on a daily basis. And we try to both bring back the customer feedback to the product team and make sure that this is something that is incorporated. And also we want to make sure that our customers whom we are working with are really aware of the latest and greatest within the product and are able to leverage that.
And also, since we are on the cloud, we have ability to capture telemetry, and some of this telemetry is how you have performed your UAT cycles, so that could be kind of married into GoLive assessment. This is really helping customer to be successful, for example, by doing the GoLive workshop review and also kind of pulling in that telemetry and making sure that based on the telemetry and data, we are talking to the customer in a self-serve fashion.
That's interesting. It sounds like it's really a combination. I know that you mentioned it's coming out of the R&D organization, but it really sounds like the kind of program that is a combination of consulting skills and and R&D know-how that have to be sort of blended together in the different phases of the of Fast Track as a customer goes through those phases of it, right?
Yeah, correct.
And I think back to I've heard of people who have joined the Fast Track team, just anecdotally, people who have joined Microsoft to become part of it. And they're often people who I think of as, who have been consultants, who have worked with clients in sort of consulting roles before, which I think makes sense.
Yeah, we have blend of both worlds.
Okay.
Exactly. And that what makes, I think, us work well.
Yeah.
And, that makes, because bringing in those different perspectives into a single team helps us to shape up the program, hopefully in the way that is useful for every customer.
When you assign an architect to a project in the over the 150 space, is that a one-to-one relationship, or do architects have multiple projects that they can work on at a time?
So the way we would like to think about is this is an investment from R&D side for the customer, and not to get into weeds of like if that architect works in a multiple engagements or a single engagement. At the end of the day, that architect will be responsible for that customer, helping along the partner for that customer to be successful. And what we mean by successful is providing the best practice guidance, reviewing. It could be like top 5 gaps, or it could be a particular area like BI is really key for customer. So whatever those areas are, kind of focusing on those areas and helping customer to implement the right solution.
So I imagine this is the kind of program that the customers love, but having been in the partner community forever, and partners don't like anything, how have you found the acceptance from the partners?
Well, and this is something obviously that we need to tread carefully, if you will, and we want to make sure that every conversation that we don't have it just one-sided way, right? So any workshop, any meeting, any recommendation we provide, that comes with alignment together with partner and the customer. So there are 3 parties to this program, right? And it cannot happen if one of the parties is not present. So first of all, when we just kick off the program, the first thing that we start with a kickoff just specifically with the partner to make sure that we align before talking to the customer, and we know both the background so that we don't need to bother the customer, in the first call, and we gather that right away from the partner project and partner perspective. So and afterwards, every single of the next conversations is really, coming from all 3 sides. I think another thing to keep in mind that whenever we run the program, we really try to make it as personal as possible, in a sense that we like to come on site and we come to spend a day or 2, again, with the implementation team, talk end-to-end through the solution blueprint, and understand both, let's say, risks of the project and opportunities in the project, and work, just to highlight the latter and make sure that customer can benefit from that.
I mean, it sounds ideal to be able to have that inside, Microsoft presence on these, because I think these are very unique projects. Who kicks off this request to be on the Fast Track program? Can a customer request this, or does this come through the partner? Does Microsoft reach out to folks? How does this happen?
Well, the beauty is that it happens automatically, right? So there is no need to ask for Fast Track. Fast Track will come to you as soon as you create a lifecycle services project. So we typically wait a few days after that project is created to make sure that the right people are added to the project, and we know whom exactly to go to and whom to contact. But once that's done, we just send a welcome email and we onboard the customer to the Fast Track program.
And just to add, when we mean by LCS project from a customer standpoint, it is when they are creating their implementation LCS project.
Can you share any of the metrics that you track as Fast Track progresses? things that you're looking for to determine customer success, for example, or things to monitor the health of the implementation from the Microsoft side?
Yeah. So first of all, for the project goals, right? As we kick off the program, I think in the kickoff meeting, we started with fully talking with key people within implementation project on the customer side and on the partner side. And we ask first, what's your first of all goal? Why are you implementing, started this project? And what are the measurable success goals, right? So what are you looking for in there? So that gives us a great perspective in the beginning of the project to understand the overall footprint and understand the motivation behind one or another decision that is being made. And later on throughout the journey, right, and towards the end of the engagement, once we are offboarding the fast track, right, we have something that we call post GoLive readiness review, where we just meet back together and we look at that conversation that we had during the kickoff with the success goal, and we try also to measure discuss at that point of time, how well we have succeeded with what the goals have been set in the first place, right? And if there was sometimes there are some very interesting outcomes, let's say that that benefits are coming in this way, but sometimes in even the ways that customer haven't realized in the beginning, right? So we try to make sure that we capture those in the beginning, let's say, and follow up towards the end. And throughout the journey itself, right, we not basing everything purely on the conversation, but a lot of our work together happens with monitoring telemetry data. So, for example, as customer is doing the user acceptance testing on the sandbox environment, what solution architect typically does, right, when we are looking through the results through that UAT, we look into the backing telemetry data of that environment and make sure that it was, let's say, if performance of that environment was doing all right, right? If we have seen the turnover and, let's say, the number of operations, what we would expect for that user acceptance test environment to be, and look for every different sign. So we do have the playbook for that.
And just to also add, right, one of the things that we also measure is we do have Milestone Workshop. So within those Milestone Workshop, we kind of go back and check the preparedness for moving to the next phase. So coming out of the design, we will be involved in certain aspects of design, but in terms of like taking the top 5 design gaps and making sure that those gaps are defined well, and also putting a perspective of looking at our roadmap and making sure that they are in line with our roadmap, right? So going through this is just an example, but with each milestone and with each phase, there are different things that we look at. Have you set up your DevOps right so that you can support multi-phase go live, multi-phase rollout functionality and all this?
Hey, Jason, what I think is interesting as we're having this conversation, the thought I keep having is that a lot of this great information, a lot of the folks that we talk to that are kind of considering whether it's the right time or, what they need to do this kind of upgrade, probably having this kind of conversation and getting, some of this kind of data that these folks are providing, further out in almost that analysis phase for companies would be really cool. Because guys, a lot of the folks that we're talking to are the folks that are, contemplating when and how to do this. And so there are so many questions that people have that it sounds like a lot of this stuff, that you start getting access to is when you actually kick off the project. And we obviously deal with those folks, but I think we have a lot of folks that are contemplating the move, and they have, tons of questions that they throw our way, which I think was one of the reasons that we started looking at this podcast to look at the different areas of this process and try to get as many as much good information out to folks as possible so that they could make their decisions correctly.
Yeah, and just to add a bit for your information, some of those people that Peter's referring to are OnPrem AX customers who are at that point where they're trying to make that decision. Do we look to initiate an upgrade project? Do we decide to hang back for some amount of time? So they haven't initiated an implementation. They haven't really committed to moving forward yet with a partner team. Do you hear from customers like that often?
Yeah, Jason, we do hear, and one of the patterns that we are seeing is exactly what you mentioned. So customer wants to go through an evaluation phase, and we see that like either the partner or the customer kind of create a LCS learning project, just to either a learning project or a preview project. So preview project is something that we can track, and we'll add some more parameters to the preview project just from a telemetry standpoint to understand if the customer is evaluating who is our on-prem customer. In cases of what we are finding with the learning project is the customer creates they go through the journey of evaluation for 3 to 4 months, and the kind of pattern that we are seeing is towards the end of that, they reach out to Microsoft either through support or various other channels in terms of like, hey, I've gone through these exercise. Can you help me? I don't understand these particular 2 scenarios. How do I cut over with this large set of data? Right. So that's just an example, but we are seeing those kind of things.
And so to make sure I understand, those kinds of learning projects would not initiate sort of a fast track engagement. They're not quite far enough along.
Exactly.
Right.
But they're kicked off in LCS?
Yeah, as we said, the visibility we get is when the customer has bought licenses and they are activating their implementation project.
Okay, so you need to kick off that 20 user minimum to kind of go through that review process.
Yeah, for us to surface within our telemetry, that's the initial.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah. The way how would I see fast track program? Fast track obviously is not a pre-sales program, right? It is the program which is helping the actual implementations who are kicking off implementation activities and working with it. But from the pre-sale activity and, for customers who are looking to migrate from on-prem to the cloud overall to implement a new cloud, I think it is a great benefit to have just, when you are thinking about it, that wasn't possible and wasn't available with in the on-prem world where they can really have a direct connection to R&D team and have insight and shared best practices on the fly that are also, let's say, with the background of the actual usage and telemetry data that we see.
Well, one of the things that I'd have to think this is a nice selling point. I wonder how many partners today are sort of using this as a way to say, look, you're getting Microsoft's attention throughout this project, and you'll be sort of getting their seal of approval to some extent as you progress through the project all the way through GoLive. That's maybe a topic for another episode, Peter. But I do.
The question.
Go ahead.
The question I had. Following up on the information that they're getting on the telemetry information is, I think when you start gathering data, you're always surprised by something, because you kind of if you have many years in ERP and technology like you guys have, you probably had some thoughts on what some of those statistics are going to look like when they come in. Is there anything that surprised you or shocked you when you started gathering data on these upgrades?
I think the things that kind of shocked us in a good way is the complexity and the footprint of functionality that few customers are using. And one of the challenges that we see is like, hey, I've been live in AX 2012 for X number of years, and I have this huge database. And when I cut over to D365, I want minimal downtime, right? So that's kind of the pattern we kept hearing. And so it's good that we are getting those telemetry and feedback constantly. So this will help us kind of document that pattern and kind of make it self-serve using docs.microsoft.com. So this is just an example where we are working to make sure if customers have more than, let's say, 300 GB of data, how do they actually cut over with minimal downtime?
Velocity of some implementations is another thing that probably what we see and how fast we see some of the implementations going through. Obviously, we still have, some that are tagging for a longer period of time because it tackles really complex problems and, replacing the whole ecosystem of what customer has had before. So we cannot avoid those. But a kind of an insight of how fast you can go from the just starting off the LCS project and acquiring the license until you really go to that readiness and maturity point to go live, even though sometimes it is a smaller scope in the beginning that being evolved and grows after the initial go live. We see a ton of those projects coming through right now, which is again a beauty of cloud implementation.
And how fast are those going? How fast are you seeing those?
Well, as soon as I should probably look up what was the fastest one, but I definitely saw some going live within 3 months. It's now shocker these days. And again, depending on the scope, depending what it is, right? And obviously, it still has to reach that maturity. We don't want somebody going live and they are not ready, and that's why we have the Readiness Workshop and other things in place, but we definitely see some happening very, very fast.
What are you guys finding are the the toughest hurdles to overcome? Is it somebody has 10 ISVs and trying to reconfigure those? They're connecting with a ton of legacy systems that are currently on premise, being held together by old hardware. What are you finding the biggest challenges that, if somebody's contemplating this, they really need to focus on getting that straightened out before making this jump successfully?
I think there are if I had to call out top 3 or top 4, I think the first complexity that we hear from customer or see is, hey, I have this functional footprint and I have customized this gap and I want to know whether this is now part of standard D365. If it is, then how do I transition? So that's one of the top complexity we are seeing. And the second thing is ISV, right? I have this 10 ISVs, and as a customer, I don't know if these 10 ISVs are available in D365 or not. And some of these ISV functionality could be part of standard product now. So you would see that with Blue Horseshoe solution, catch weight tagging, and few other things, right? So now it's part of the core product. So that's one of the complexities that we are seeing around ISV. And kind of third challenge, I would just put it as a platform. It may be multiple things. One is how do I integrate within the platform? How do I integrate, right? In on-prem world, integration landscape look different, and with the cloud, the way you integrate with the products definitely change. And it's again like a mindset change for some of these customers, because now you need to understand cloud and how what are the best practices, how cloud products communicate with each other, or a cloud product communicating with the on-prem.
Since you put ISV number 2, is there like a master list that gives folks looking at this a status of where let's say the top 100 ISVs or the top 50 or the top 20s, where they stand in regards to their those status with being ready to rock and roll with the finance and operations solution?
Yeah, we've got overall certification process, right, for ISV solutions. So if you will look into our app source, you can definitely go in there and look up any of the ISVs that you currently have in terms of where they are, the certification on being used with Dynamics 365 finance and operations in the cloud, right?
Okay.
So it's very clear and great place to go just to
sure. It's more so looking them up individually than a list that you guys have of here's the approved list of ISVs.
Well, that has a list, right? So if you will just sort by the product, and it covers multiple products as well, you will be able to see what's certified with finance and operations.
Yeah, that's a really great tip.
And Peter, just to add, I know I kind of summarized as top 3, and outside this, one of the complexities we are hearing from customer and partner is how do I estimate this, right? So that's where we want to provide certain guidance in terms of how to estimate this effort. So you would see some improvements in code upgrade toolset to provide some guidance on how much time it will take for moving, let's say, overlays to extension. And also we want soon in the implementation methodology, we'll have kind of like a template project plan, which will tell you what are the activities that you need to execute in which phase, so that you get a holistic picture to then go plan for this.
Perfect. Yeah, that's a lot. A lot of people ask that question, right? One of the interesting things is that as you're talking to companies that are taking a look at this process, the wide variety of estimates that they're getting from folks, I think one of the things that everybody searches for is, somebody like Microsoft having that credibility to be able to tell them, based on our experience on these 10 quotes that you have, here's kind of the area where we think it's reasonable. The other thing that I find is really interesting with, with the install base that's taking a look of upgrading, to the cloud, is everybody's asked us the question, should we go on-premise, with D365, or should we go to the cloud? And I didn't think that was a question that a lot of people were going to ask. For folks that have regulatory or, whatever particular reasons they have for migrating to F&O, but want to go on-premise, is the Fast Track program available to on-premise as well?
So right, Fast Track program is geared towards cloud customers, and for Fast Track on-prem, so I shouldn't say Fast Track on-prem, sorry. For customers who are choosing on-prem, we want them to be self-service. So that's where we will work on surfacing those self-service capabilities and materials. We will not have any program or Fast Track program for on-prem customers. So Peter and Jason, the things that I spoke about in terms of complexities, those complexities remain same for at least, like, let's say AX 2012 customers moving to D365. Whether they go to cloud or whether they go to on-prem, they have to go through like code upgrade process, data upgrade process. They'll have to go through UAT cycle, regression cycle. So those kind of complexities remain the same. And we will provide guidance in docs.microsoft.com in terms of like, how do you code upgrade? So irrespective of both deployment options, the benefit is the same. So for those things will be the same in terms of like what are the elements that I need to work on. The final deployment things, whether you move to cloud or on-prem, those are the only changes. But for the most part, in terms of how you go through the journey, thinking of analysis phase, then execute phase, so those kind of remain the same.
One of the questions I had, which I thought was actually pretty interesting, from somebody, from a prospect that was looking in the future to upgrade to D365, but they're not going to get the financial support from the company. It might be a year or 2 years out. And one of the questions the IT folks and the business folks asked was, if we know that we're going to go here eventually, what do we do today to get ourselves in the best shape so that when we get the go-ahead from management to kick over, how do we set ourselves up to be in the best possible position to take advantage of a smooth upgrade when we get that go-ahead?
So first one for me would be like when you're thinking about new ongoing customization, think about it in a way that you're not continuing to develop intrusive customization and changing the standard product behavior. That will kind of pay dividends long run when you are moving to the cloud. So that's definitely one thing I would recommend. And the second thing is there are certain tool sets even available today. For example, we have a service wherein it's all documented in LCS, and this feature is also available in LCS. So you can deploy that service to kind of look at your AX 2012 database and come back with recommendations in terms of like you can clean up certain tables, and also it will list what are the potential functionalities that are deprecated. So if you have high dependency on the functionalities that we have deprecated, then you can start thinking about, hey, when I move to D365, I should be using this functionality this way, and I should reduce dependency on the deprecated functionality.
Yeah, that's a great tip. Thank you.
Another question that occurred to me was just related to one of the newest, I guess, changes to the D365 finance and operations experience, which is the I guess the embrace of the one version approach, which I know you're both involved with. Does one version change the way Fast Track works with companies going live? Have you had to adapt the process at all?
Well, go live process, I don't think that is drastically changed. I think all that one version brings is mostly a benefit, right? So there are some things that you need to think along the way as you are implementing. First of all, you need to make sure that you are thinking about your regression testing, right? And as a part of the artifacts of the implementation project, you not only think about how you are going to manually test the system once, right, before the go live, but you are also thinking, what is my end-to-end test scenario, right, to make sure that what I'm using within finance and operations is working at all times, and how can I record those tests using regression suite automation toolkit that we have available, so I can rerun it afterwards, as many times as I like, and make sure that after any update, everything that I'm using works exactly the same way as it worked before. So I think that there are some artifacts during the implementation that you need to start thinking about, and we are definitely evangelizing on that and helping implementation projects to get up to speed. But other than that, I think there is a lot of good and positive outcome coming with the one version. For example, I have one IX 2012 migration customer who actually just went live this today, right? So it's a little celebration for me as well. And when we talked about the implementation goals, when we've been kicking off the program, and when we talked about the expectations a couple of months ago when we just started working together, I do remember how they program manager and sponsor have been talking about that they are moving to cloud exactly because of the one version, because of the not willing to have that burden of doing the upgrade multiple times, right? And just being able to get the benefit of new features on a regular basis without a major investment coming into it. So,
yeah, and I guess one of the other things related to that I can imagine is, you must see companies of all types going through fast track and deploying finance and operations. Does the fast track team sort of have the power to say, like, look, we need to slow this project down. We're seeing things that concern us. We need to maybe push back a live date because things are becoming high risk?
Well, I never say push back the go live date, right? I say we always want to make sure that customer goes live as soon as possible, but there are some certain things that have to be done before you go live, right? So it's probably not the date discussion. It's more what has to be done before we claim we are ready. And sometimes it just takes time.
Yeah, it's more about readiness.
Yeah.
I don't want to call it as a power, but we want to make sure that customer is risk averse, right? So if we see that this is a huge customer and let's say they have 3,000 concurrent users and they haven't gone through a performance testing cycle. So that's kind of a red flag for us. If there are a lot of extensions that they have done, and with that kind of volume of users, we definitely want customers to do perf testing. So it will be a conversation with customer and partner that, hey, this is your go live date, but we also want to make sure that we are covered from a performance standpoint.
Yeah, it's not about the date. It's about making sure once you are live that you are not running into business critical issues, right? It's one thing when sometimes you maybe need to wait a little bit longer to make sure that you mitigate any risks, versus another thing, you go live and you realize that, something critical is not working, right? We don't want anybody to be there. So that's where, fast track team steps in and helps with the guidance on that.
Yeah, we definitely don't want customer to go live the very first day and their business is down. So that's a really bad experience to have.
Internally at Microsoft, you guys represent a very specific team doing a specific task, a set of tasks here. Do you find that the partners that you're working with also have dedicated upgrade teams, or are they from the general consulting pool, as far as the folks that you guys are working with?
So is your question around partner readiness, or is the question around, are you seeing partners proactively do certain things?
Oh, no. I mean, are you working with, are you seeing that partners are designating, resources to do these type of projects over and over and over? Dedicated teams to do this kind of work?
Yeah, we are kind of seeing that pattern with all our big partners, where they have like center of excellence, where they have certain resources who are dedicated on upgrades. And we have also seen that they also have like sophisticated pre-sales team who can talk exactly in terms of what are the things that customer needs to do during the implementation. So yeah, we are definitely seeing that. And this is one of the topics we also talk about in bootcamp. And we are helping partners who attend these bootcamps, or we had certain workshops focused on, like, for example, AX 2009 upgrade process and 2012 upgrade process and 2009 migration process. We recently had one workshop for partners in AXUG. So we definitely see partners building that capability as individual teams within the organization.
How many year process do you know, if you think about the existing install base of AX customers, and you imagine that, I don't know, do you think like 80, 90, 100% of them are at some point going to migrate? And, what is that number? What's your estimate of that? And is that going to be a 3-year process, a 5-year process? What's your guesstimate on that? How long is that, how long is that piece of business open?
Currently, I don't have an estimate, but we do have service policies for how long we will support 2012. And once the extended support is done, then there is no official support from Microsoft on those versions.
What happens if you have 80% of the, really big installs haven't made the move, right? That's got to be a tough decision then, right?
I think what we are seeing right now is we have worked with really huge customers, and these customers are proactively reaching out to Microsoft in terms of going through the upgrade. It has been, I see like customers reaching out to us in most of the instances that they are willing to move to D365. And we are also having certain programs like workshops and all those things to help customer to make this journey to cloud.
I think 100% of the folks we talk to, it's exciting and they want to do it. So it's sometimes the capabilities to garner all the resources, right? Because there are some challenging aspects to it. So definitely people are excited and want to do it.
Yeah, I mean, I think a program like this certainly ought to add to people's confidence too, looking, especially for the install base, like you were saying, Peter. I hope this podcast helps get them a little more interested in or knowledgeable in what's out there, so they can understand more and ask their partners to help explain to them what's out there in terms of guiding them through this. Because I think a lot of this to me sounds like it's risk mitigation, which I think is risk is the big thing that when we've talked to AX customers looking at finance and operations, they seem to need more questions answered and before they make their decision.
Yeah, and that's where we want to help and make sure all of these are self-service, and we have enough. We want to do tech talks and we want to do these workshops where customers can come into the workshops and benefit. So we have done workshops in the past where we had customers attend the workshop and literally start the code upgrade process in those workshops, like a 4-day workshop kind of a thing. We want this journey for customer to be as easy as possible. That's where we are doing investments in platform and upgrade service and data upgrade. So wherever we are seeing bottleneck, we are investing. So one of the immediate investments you would see is on the code upgrade kind of update estimates, where we look at your code and tell whether this particular line of item is a simple extension or it is a complex extension that you have to develop, or a medium extension. Currently, those are the investments that we are doing. And we also would look at what's your functional footprint in AX 2012 and how your functional footprint would look in D365. So those are some of the investments we want to do to help customers.
Yeah, so I think, and I'm not a technical person, I'm just technical enough to be dangerous. The way I've heard it described is that it's not only the number of objects and types of objects that you're upgrading, but also the complexity of those individual objects. And I think that's what you're getting to as far as developing code that not only counts the numbers and types of objects, but also kind of looks under the hood and sees how complex they are.
Yeah, correct.
So I believe you're on Fast Track. Now, do you version the Fast Track service? Because I'm just wondering in terms of what comes next. I had seen Fast Track 3.0 as the current version. Is that right? And do you sort of have a roadmap that people might be looking out for?
Yeah, we will publish something, but right now we are in Fast Track 3.0, and as like any like cloud service, we would learn certain things and we would want to improve this program.
We are not defined by the number,
Yeah.
right? A number is not going to stop us. So we are constantly looking for improvements in different areas, and we are looking into the ways how we can evangelize those best practices in the most efficient way, and share that with as effectively and as widespread as possible. So continuing journey.
Yeah, continuous improvement.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to do this today. Peter, did you have any other questions?
No, I just my hat is off to the two of you, because I cannot imagine how busy you are, and the complexity of all the things that you have to deal with on a daily basis. I can't tell you how much I appreciate you taking the time out and answer questions, and fantastic. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, I would.
Thanks, Jason, for inviting us.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was really our pleasure, and I hope we can reconnect either with another podcast or some other way to sort of share updates as the program evolves and matures and changes over time. So thank you, and I hope we can speak again soon.
Sure, thank you.
This has been another episode of the MSDW podcast. My thanks to Gokul, Sigita, and Peter for joining me today. If you have any feedback, please get in touch. jgumpert@msdynamicsworld.com. Until next time, this is MS Dynamics World signing off.